Good evening. I call the August 13th, 2024 Ames Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Policy Committee to order. Good evening, committee members. We have a couple items on the agenda tonight. First is consent agenda. Is there anyone that wants to pull either item from consent and ask staff questions? If not, entertain a motion approving consent.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. And move on to item number 3, hearing on amendment to FFY 2024-2027 Transportation Improvement Program. Kyle?
Yeah, so this amendment was a request from Iowa DOT. They have a project on US 30 where they're widening US 30 to 6 lanes from South Dayton to South Duff, as well as widening the bridge over the South Skunk River. And this amendment request was just so that they can get to their funding in a timely manner, as well as more accurately describe the project in the tip. There's nothing changing with the project itself. And this amendment was already reviewed by the policy committee back in July. We had a 15-day public comment period, and we did not receive any comments.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have one question,
Please.
and that's because the council is going to be acting on potential sale of the land on which part of this project is going to occur. Is there any issue with us approving this change now when we're acting on that in the next meeting?
No, this just moves the funding from the next fiscal year to this current fiscal year to allow them to move forward in their letting cycle. So that would be independent.
Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. I declare the public hearing on this particular item to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address the committee on the amendment to the FFY 2024-2027 Transportation Improvement Program? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing to be closed. Entertain a motion approving the amendment.
So moved.
Is there a second? Is there a second? Second. I move. Second. Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. All right. Are there any comments from the Transportation Committee? Gloria? Tim?
No comments.
Bill?
No comments.
Linda?
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
We adjourn. Second.
Say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
All right, we'll call the regular meeting of the Ames City Council for August 13th to order. Welcome, everybody. And we're going to start off with a proclamation for Water and Wastewater Workers Week. Whereas the water and wastewater workforce of the city of Ames have dedicated themselves to combining their passion for protecting public health and the environment with their technical skills and expertise to deliver safe, high-quality drinking water and protect the aquatic resources of Ames. And whereas their commitment to serving the Ames community is displayed 24 hours per day, 7 days per week, without regard to holiday, weather, or natural disaster. And whereas their applied environmentalism is essential to the continued quality of life in Ames and in promoting sustainability throughout the community. And whereas Iowa Governor Reynolds has declared October 18th through the 24th as Water and Wastewater Workers Week of Iowa. Therefore, I, John A. Haley, Mayor of the City of Ames, Iowa, do hereby proclaim August 18th to 24th, 2024 as Water and Wastewater Workers Week in Ames, and urge all residents to take a moment to reflect upon the important role these dedicated employees fulfill in protecting our way of life in Ames. Parul, are you going to make a few comments?
Thank you, Mayor Hela, and everyone present here, as well as the council members. I am Parul Barnwal, and I'm the new Assistant Director for the Water and Pollution Control Facility. I am so honored to stand here to receive this proclamation on the behalf of our dedicated team. And I want to express my gratitude to receive this recognition. The Ames Water and Pollution Control Facility and the Public Work Department does a very critical work in managing our water as well as sewer utilities. And this acknowledgement is the testament to the hard work, dedication, and the expertise of our entire team. Thank you for recognizing this effort and the impacts we make on the life of our residents. Thank you.
Council, we have probably the first time in my tenure, we're going to start trying to do some celebrations in the community. And one of them is an event that happened last week, and that was a National Night Out. And full disclosure, it was the first time that I had the opportunity to attend, and I was absolutely blown away by the number of volunteers and the number of people that were served. And so I had the honor of talking with Jen Peterson, who is really kind of the tireless. Are you the instigator? Or are you basically the anyway? You coordinator, whatever. Anyway, she and I started talking and said, we need to really celebrate what's going on well in Ames. So I've asked her, and she put together a short PowerPoint to kind of highlight the event. And then after that, I've drafted a certificate of appreciation and recognition for all the organizations that have participated, and it's really an amazing program. So I'm going to turn it over to Jen, and she's going to introduce others who might share things. And she even has a bodyguard in Chief Huff. Anyway, so all right, Jen, please.
Sure. So I put together just quick 8 slides. I think a lot of it helps. We want to have just a community celebration. And then I kind of took a look at the 3 C's and said, let's celebrate, let's communicate, and let's connect. And just to give you perspective, I'm going to let the chief here speak as it relates to the National Night Out Hope in Christ event.
So as you know, this is a national event that's always on the first Tuesday in August. So we just got done with that. So the event that we've put on for years is we've tried to bring in some community resources. And this year we changed things up a little bit. You might know in the past we've given away school supplies We changed things up a little bit because we think maybe there's other needs in the community. So this year we gave away 839 pairs of shoes that Jen bought all of them. I don't know exactly how she did this magic, but she was able to acquire that many shoes. We had 700 bike helmets, over 900 pairs of socks. We gave away 12 bikes to some lucky raffle holders, and we cooked 1,100 hot dogs, and they were all gone at the end.
Wow.
So I'm sorry you missed out, but next year we may have to up that amount a little bit. Now, estimating crowd size is always pretty tough. I'm positive there was at least 2,000. I think it was probably that 2,500 number. It's always hard to tell unless you can kind of get above, which the helicopter was not there in time to get that crowd size for us. So that's how things started off. And I think we've taken some comments off of social media about the event, but as you can see, this is really a community event. The helicopter was something new this year. We got the Reserve Center, Garden Reserve Center to help us out and bring that over. And they are very excited to do this again next year and maybe bring some other things with them as well, which would be pretty cool. We cooked the hot dogs. We gave out the hot dogs. We had some other social services there, which I think you're going to hear about. And importantly, also got people signed up for the Blast Back event to make sure that we get school supplies too when that event happens.
So touch on just a little bit. I kind of wanted to highlight, we have some people in the audience. You can kind of wave your hands that were part of the Hope in Christ event. So literally, these are the people that were sizing all the kids. They showed up and they sized their feet. And you want to talk about myriad of volunteers that we had. They sized their feet. They handed that off to somebody who then went and they ran into our shoe room that we created in the gym. So we're really super thankful for Ames Schools because they let us use the middle school guys. This was phenomenal to have a space and have that much parking. And we also wanted it on a bus route because that then also gave more accessibility. So thankful for SciRide for that. But my understanding is the parking lot was very, very full. But they sized them. The kids ran in and got some shoes, brought them out. It gave them 2 choices to pick from. And so kids got to have options with schools. And we're talking, these are athletic shoes. And we bought, on average, our price per shoe was $23.11. And so you start to say, man, we bought some $65 shoes. We bought stuff and got great deals. Trade Home was awesome. They pulled from a 5-state radius. They're like onesie twosies that were left. They shipped them to Minnesota and then shipped them down to the Ames store. And so we bought it was like 220 pairs of shoes from them. And so coordinated super well with the police department. They stored them. And so we're thankful for that piece too as well. From a Blast Pack to school perspective, things that we kind of wanted to highlight here is this was like a county-wide event. And so we actually, some of our goals is just we want to meet the needs in Story County. So it's Ames, but also surrounding school districts. You look at all those backpacks, we want it to be that when they show up, it's not identified that they went to an event, that the kids get to pick something, and we wanted high quality items. So the way that we bought our shoes, our average price per backpack was $12.23. So again, we're trying to be a good steward of the finances that we have. And then we had really, really great involvement from a community perspective with volunteering and packing, but then also from business and organizations. So like United Way is our fiscal agent. Without them, we could not do this. And so we're really super thankful for all of the partnerships. Yesterday, we packed 1,700 backpacks at the middle school. We started at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we were done and cleaned up to the point where the janitor was super happy at 5 p.m. And Nevada took over 400 backpacks over to their school district. Their event is today. Ames held their event today. And then Roland Story, I actually wrote down some of the dates just so I wouldn't forget. Roland Story was also today. Ballard is on the 16th. Colonesco is on the 21st, and then Collins Maxwell on the 22nd. And so we were able to take care of all those schools with the $21,000 that we got through grants, through businesses donating, and then all the supplies too as well. You're probably saying, hey, that's great. Who's involved? It's really the community. And we wanted to highlight that the schools are really participating. They're giving us really honest lists of how we can best help their kids. You guys, we had some great corporate sponsors too as well. Just like you look at that back of that pickup, Winfield donated like 120 backpacks and just showed up that morning. We've got churches, like I will tell you, Hope in Christ, just with the partnership we had by saving them money with their drive that we did. We were able to cut their budget in half. They were able to donate to this event, which helped us stretch our dollars and fill the need from the backpacks, and then keep our event open through the registration through their event. And then the service organizations really, really stepped up too as well. What I'm asking is, we want people to be aware of these events for next year. So we would love to continue the attendance at the National Night Out like we had. Blast Back to School, we want kids to register. And then we're also just looking for volunteers and donations, because I think if we can communicate the need, and if we can communicate, here's a great vehicle to participate, it's something that we can continue to talk and have greater impact within our community. And we talk about impact. These are all the people that donated, that were on committee planning meetings, and we're just really super involved, and we're thankful for all their help and support. And we've got Kate from Blast Back to School. She's like our fearless leader. But we're really thankful for just our small but mighty groups, but just also how the whole community, schools, city, and everybody came together.
Any questions?
Thank you for putting that together. And
Yeah.
really, it's a good moving example of what we can do working together. So
I know. It was fun because we used to have 2 backpack events, and then all of a sudden we said, how can we do better and how can we do more? And I think we did it. We did it.
that's
I
awesome.
love that change.
That's awesome.
To have the shoes and the socks and the raffle and all of that. That's just great.
Robert was saying we got, I think it was 800 pairs of socks that were donated from Bombas. I mean, so you talk about like, he's like, I think this is what God is telling us that we need to do. And it was cool. So that was kind of one of the things that helped us flip the shoes.
That's awesome.
And they're still tired from running back and forth.
Oh my gosh. We had the cross country team helping us, the Ames High cross country team. They were running. So it was a lot of cool things. Yeah. I'll take this out. And then how about we have our group come up
Yeah.
for a photo?
Let me read this. Come on up, and I'll read this certificate of recognition and appreciation, and then we'll take some photos. And there's going to be a certificate for everyone who participated. So Jen has some already, and then we'll make sure others get it too. So on behalf of the entire Ames community, we recognize, commend, and express gratitude for the time and resources every individual and organization contributed to these events, resulting in a resounding success of the 2024 National Night Out and Blast Back to School events held this month. Absent the dedication of each entity and volunteer efforts in planning, preparing for, and working during the events, they would not have been successful. Countless families and students benefited from your efforts and donations that provided resources for students as they start out the upcoming school year. The City of Ames recognizes and commends the following generous donors for time, products, finances, use of facilities, committee members, and volunteers associated with the following organizations. And I won't read them, but you can see it's just a super long list, and it's really a very broad base. By investing in our youth through these undertakings and events, community connections are forged and strengthened. Together, we can and are making a difference in the lives of students and their families. Thank you for your demonstrated commitment to the Ames and Story County communities. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda. Is there any item that council wishes to pull tonight?
I'd like to pull number 11.
Number 11. Anything else? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve consent less item number 11.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Fallon, you have
Oh,
any-
I just needed to abstain on number 11.
All right. Is there a motion approving item number 11?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to public forum. This is the time we set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. And we'll not take any action on these. Is there anyone who wants to address council? And Richard, I see you're interested in starting us off.
Some time ago, 4 years ago, actually, I tried carrying this sign into Walmart, and I got stopped by Mr. Bill, who introduced himself as assistant manager of Walmart, and I had to beg to shop at Walmart, you know, and it's like but it's like sometime later, I had heard what Walmart just did to the kids at Rosedale Shelter. And I think it's absolutely criminal how they treat people, you know, and it's like, I don't know.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to address council under public forum? Seeing none, we'll close public forum. We'll move on to item number 34, request to modify downtown facade grant funding eligibility.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council persons. I'm Scott Mormon from Mormon Clothiers. We have owned this business for 19 years.
Excuse me, Scott, we will have public comment.
Oh, okay.
So if you would just let Kelly make the presentation first,
Yep.
and then we'll go ahead and have discussion, and then we'll certainly call you up. Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't make break.
Good evening, Council. Mr. Mormon had requested the City Council consider some changes to the downtown facade program, and you referred this to staff for discussion. And after reviewing Mr. Mormon's request and talking with him, we understand the request to kind of have two policy issues for you. And they have been at times brought up in the past. And they're the question of whether the downtown facade program, which now is focused on funding improvements to storefronts and removing non-compliant or outdated kind of facade materials and replacing with more modern storefronts, which is as the priority of the program, whether other activities such as maintenance activities or doing work on the rear facades of buildings could then be eligible in the program. So we gave you some information describing how the program has worked and what some of the things are that we have done recently to update the program in terms of allowing for historic preservation activities, for rehabilitation of character defining features, as well as increasing the budget recently for the program. As we start to talk about the options, there's really two options. Again, they can either be put together or dealt with separately, meaning you don't have to pick only one of them. You could pick both of them, or you could maintain the program in its current format and not modify it at all. As what we understand in the past, maintenance was not eligible as an activity because of the strong desire to prioritize our funds towards enhancements to the appearance of downtown, and again, very much focused on those front facades. And as the program's developed over time, we've instituted two grant rounds. So you have a fall round and a spring round. And that fall round, based on some other council decisions, is really prioritized towards Main Street facades. And then the spring round allows for second grants, other areas to be funded that may have had a grant previously. And there's also some scoring criteria that if there was a competitiveness to the grant round that could be evaluated. So we've kind of always prioritized the fall for Main Street. And then in the spring, it could be either Main Street or some of these other activities like the historic preservation grants that have also been allowed for. So within these two options, there's details about what could be eligible. There's questions about funding that could be would need to be decided, and then also timing of when these types of grants may be made available in the spirit of the way the system operates now. Obviously, council can modify the program in any way it wants. It doesn't have to maintain a two grant cycle. It can look at things differently. We just kept within that current framework as we were discussing this in the staff report. I think the biggest issue for us is trying to understand, as we normally do with these types of programs, is what is the priority, what's the intent, and then how do we define, if we're going to make changes, how do we define what's acceptable or what we want to do. So within the maintenance program, there's a lot of questions since we don't have a program to model it after on exactly what we're trying to accomplish, how it would be applied, things that we would have to go into a little bit deeper after tonight if council decides to take up that issue. And again, with the rear facades, it's similar. The current design guidelines are 100% focused on storefronts at the front of a building. That's the historic character of Main Street. So if we're going to look at adding rear facades to the program, there's a lot of work that could be done. It could be shortened and just say it's eligible, or we could define expectations up front. I think in the past, we've always tried to define expectations. That way it's more of a cut and dried decision by council when the grants are submitted. And it's not as much of an evaluation here at the dais about the merit of a request. So I think you've been through this for many years, seeing what we get for applications. And I think we're really just looking for direction on if priorities are changing for the program, what some of those preferences might be. You would not be adopting any amendments tonight. You would be directing staff on how to proceed, what type of outreach might be necessary, and then we would return with anything that might be of interest to you to be approved at a later date. So if there's any questions about the history or any of these two options, I'm happy to answer them.
Kelly, we, several years ago, staff report notes that we increased the amount of the grant. I apologize, I had this here.
Correct.
From 15,000 to 25,000. With the inflation that we've seen in construction costs, how do we know that we've right-sized that? Because that's going to cover an increasingly smaller number of projects. Do you have any advice for council in terms of the sizing when you look at the kind of projects that are coming in? In other words, we'd get more projects if there was more money, certainly. But how do we know we've right-sized that?
So we changed it last year, and I do not recall everything that we put into that decision. So what council did originally was increase the total budget by 25, so it went from 50 to 75. And then the question before council was, how much could any one grant be? So I think ultimately that decision was based on trying to maintain funding for 3 grants in a year, and that's the number we escalated it to. I can't remember if we did some building cost analysis to go with that or not, but I think it was mostly about just trying to size 3 grants to the allocation we make every year.
Okay. It's just something I think council should be cognizant of, that a lot has changed since this project was rolled out, and projects that we could have funded 10 years ago we wouldn't be able to fund those today. So we just need to keep our eye on that ball.
Other questions?
Sorry, Kelly, I'm trying to get a clear picture of the staff workload for this. Do you recall how much work went into the slight expansion that we did recently with the changing of the amount and the
amount was minimal. It was really kind of 3 decision points over like an 18-month period. So there was a couple of different touch points that we had with you. The input piece was really embedded last year in the discussion you had us do for some conversations with downtown businesses. So last August, we reported back some input from different business and property owners. And during that whole year of time, you had this activity to us to talk to downtown. And on the fringe of those conversations was the facade program. It was not the priority, but it was a fringe element of that. So you didn't really allocate or program a bunch of time just about facade programs. You just had multiple touch points over time for changes. And you did not seek really public input on them in any substantial way, other than we're here tonight. People were made aware of the meeting, but we didn't hold any particular forums or discussion groups with people.
So if we wanted to make, again, limited changes based on the input that we have had in the past, we wouldn't need to be doing the heavy outreach now. If we were thinking in the future, we may come back to this and do more revision.
I
Is
I
that?
guess. I mean, I think in trying to understand what more revision would be, I think what we alluded to is that the downtown plan process has been started.
Mhm.
It's unclear what the outcome of that's going to be in terms of request of city resources versus private investment. I think there's a possibility that rear of buildings will come. I know rear of buildings will come up, and whether
Mhm.
that's a private investment issue or a city incentive issue, I don't know that yet. What our objectives are. So it's possible a year from now you get new priorities, and then you might change the program again. Again, it's the council's program. It's been modified or adapted as needed over the past 15 years.
I'm just thinking that it may be possible for us to make some changes, not invest a lot of staff time at this point, but to look forward to the future of investing once we have the downtown plan in place, but to open up the grants somewhat. Historic preservation has been changing in recent years, and there is a lot of focus on maintaining historic structures along with doing things like restoring the facades of buildings. But I mean, the sad truth is you can do what you want to a facade, but if you haven't maintained the building, your building may still fall down. And I don't want to see us have gaps in Main Street because we have buildings, as Tim says, that their projects have gotten very, very expensive to complete. And so I also don't want to see staff investing a lot of time at this point in discussing, because I think we will have bigger discussions and more informed discussions once we have that downtown plan and understand it better. But I don't think that means we can't act in a limited way to expand the program toward maintenance. And I think it fits with our goal, number one, of diverse housing options, because we want to have housing upstairs in our Main Street buildings. And if the buildings aren't capable of standing up anymore, we aren't going to be doing that. And I also think it adds to community vitality to ensure that our historic downtown is maintained. So I could see ways of limiting this to buildings that are contributing structures to the downtown historic district and to the sorts of activities that might be considered structural maintenance. But I'm not clear how you're defining structural maintenance, because I see structural improvements, roof repairs, tuck pointing of brick. Those seem to be separate things. So is tuck pointing structural maintenance, or isn't it? Are roof repairs structural maintenance, or aren't they? To me, they all sound like they're related to the integrity of the structure, but
Yeah, I don't know if I have that answer tonight. So those are major things that have been brought up in the past from different business owners or different conversations. So I was trying to try to get things out that you guys might have heard or things to think about. I think that's something I don't have a final answer for tonight. I would probably want to talk to inspections, and there's probably things on this list that aren't on that they would say, well, why wouldn't we want to fund that?
Mhm.
That's the kind of conversations that still need to happen. If you're going to talk about maintenance and it's not going to be for everything or anything, then yeah, we need to define what that subset is. Staff can do that internally. It doesn't necessarily have to go out for public comment in that way.
so that's more of a limited
I think that's
staff time commitment.
Sure. Just talking with inspections to understand how they would look at that. That's not a large commitment of time. It's always, I almost always tell you, it's when significant research or public outreach is necessary, and a lot of involvement there. That's usually what dictates that time commitment in the work plan. Tweaks to code language that don't involve a lot of public input, internal staff time, that's not a big deal.
Anything else?
I think that's what I've got, unless somebody
you.
says something else that makes me think of something.
Thank you. Other questions? Kelly, it seems that the the issue you're kind of talking about is maintenance has been excluded previously. Do you have any knowledge of the history, why when the program was first set up, why maintenance wasn't included?
I guess my understanding from both 2000 and roughly 2011 which was the more major update that happened again. I think that those two councils decided their priorities and investment were to make as many storefronts updated. And that was their number one goal. And they wanted to keep the program focused on that. That's my understanding from reading through the minutes and different discussions. And Steve's nodding his head that sounds right to him too.
Mayor, could I?
Sure.
I was chair of the Preservation Commission for a lot of that time. And the downtown, those of us who have lived in Ames for several decades will know that the downtown had a significant need for facade improvements because of the many questionable decisions that had been made back in the 60s and 70s with what got applied to the fronts of the buildings. And so the Preservation Commission was trying to bring things back into a more historic look as opposed to the 1970s slap up some MDF and paint it look. And I think that has happened over the course of the last 2 decades. So I would say from my perspective, the goals of the Preservation Commission, which seemed to be what the council was approving, were to make the downtown look more like it historically did. And that goal, I think, has been achieved in many cases. And so I haven't asked the Preservation Commission now, but I would guess that would not necessarily be top of their list at this point because the buildings look much better than they did previously.
Thank you. Any further questions? All right, we'll open up public input. Scott, if you'd like to address council, you're welcome to do so. Thank you for coming.
Thank you again, and sorry for jumping the gun on that.
Okay.
We were part of this project in 2011, and it was a great project. We took off what you were just talking about.
Mhm.
It was the roof situation, and it was not nice.
It's much nicer now.
Yes, thank you. And tuck pointing, just so you know, was very much involved. So there was plenty of maintenance because we had brick falling from our building from the front end. So that was definitely involved in what we're discussing on this, on the maintenance process. I think I'm talking for most all the businesses on Main Street that have back door to the south parking lot. We have 35 to 40% of our business, of our clients, coming in those doors. There's more parking back behind our stores than there are in front. So I guess I look at this, I've actually, probably for the last 5 years, every time I get that letter about the facade program, I've called. Have you opened it up to the out or to the back end yet? And I get it. I'm talking of the south end where the parking lot is behind. I'm not talking of the alleys with the back door where no one goes in or no one drives through. This is a very viable, strong parking area. And, it could be more than 35, 40%. But I think it's really, we want to, yes, some of this is maintenance. But if you talk about maintenance, you talk about tuck pointing, skimming, and repairing walls, painting, replacing and filling windows. On our southwest side, we have, I believe, 5 windows that are just boarded in. And in this process, we would want to fill those windows in, not real windows, but cover it all to make it flat, And then we've been talking to the Ames Mural and Open Air Committee. We would like to do a nice big mural, probably an Iowa State mural of some sort, or it could be some things of the city of Ames. We've been here 19 years. We love it here. My son runs the store and will own it by the end of this year. So I'll be just collecting rent. But, I just think that for people driving in, they're driving in from the south side of Kellogg and driving through this. We want to make these buildings look good. We don't, I have some tuck pointing that needs to be done. I have some skimming, all of that and above. And that's what I'm looking at. Have all the grants always been used each year?
We'll have Kelly answer that question. That if you want to just offer your comments, we'll make sure that question gets
Okay.
answered.
All right. I just curious.
Okay.
But just, I've talked to Mr. Campbell a few times on this project, and, he did point out that it's really not maintenance. But to me, I look at the maintenance like I told you, maintenance is also aesthetic pleasing. You got to have the right stuff there to make it look nice. And that's what we want to do. And I think that's what a lot more businesses downtown would do. That being said, that's really all I have. If you guys have some questions of what I'm saying or talking about, I just think it's a great project. Maybe I won't get it, but maybe my neighbor will. I just think for the back end where we and everyone else on that side gets a lot of people coming through, hopefully we can open the doors.
Thank you.
Could I ask for one piece of clarification?
Yes.
So the windows that are currently boarded up,
Yes.
did you say
So we would fill them in with studs,
okay.
cover them, make them flat. Skin, and then have a mural there. Because right now, and we've looked at and haven't done anything with upstairs housing in this building, is it used to be apartments years ago. And we've had the Main Street, Mason City years ago, the architect from there draw up some phases. And if so, the top windows would end up being opened back up. It would be a decking up there, a patio up top, and that type of thing. But at this point, that's not happening.
And one half of your building, is that right? Or is it the other one?
I think one half is.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you for sure, but I believe it is. It's
think-
226, 228
Yeah.
are the addresses.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else that wants to address council on this item? You would introduce yourself and you may start.
Hello, my name's Taylor. Just moved here in March. I don't know if I live in downtown Ames or the historic district.
Same
But
thing.
I live at 709. But when you had mentioned about the downtown facade, does that include the historic district?
No,
That-
it's commercial buildings is what it is.
just commercial buildings.
Yep.
And recently there was a change for, I work with a group that they applied for a permit at 702 Clark Avenue. And to make it a commercial building use permit, there was a special permit process. So I don't know if that counts towards that or not.
We'll ask Kelly to comment on that.
Oh, and then also, I just want to say that I also use that back parking a lot because it's free as opposed to front parking where you got to pay. And so I find myself going to the back parking lot a lot, and that I like the Cynthia Duff walkway because you don't got to walk around. You can kind of cut through, and so I don't know if that counts towards facade stuff, but just want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, we'll close public input. Kelly, there's a couple of questions here. One is, have all the grants been used this year?
No, always. The question was just, have they always all been used?
Not every year, right? So sometimes you carry over a balance, and then some years you end up awarding 5 grants instead of 2. So we awarded 2 grants this past year, so that was not the full allocation of budgeting for 3, and so you did roll money over this year.
Okay.
Or you will be able to roll money over this year. You haven't made those decisions yet.
Sure.
Second question was 702 Clark. It's a commercial. What's the limitation, or what's the facade grant program limits for this?
It's for downtown, so it's for 6th Street to the railroad tracks, then Northwestern to
North of 6th is not.
north of 6th is not part of that area.
Okay.
I mean, nor would the Romero House be a commercial purpose, right? That was more this.
It would not. Nonprofit agencies aren't eligible. Well, that's not true either. We have changed that now. So they're not eligible for tax abatement, but they are eligible for grants in downtown. So like the Octagon is eligible.
But that's within the confines.
Yeah,
of the
that's
border
within the
defined
confines
there.
of the boundary.
Yep. And interesting comment. I too like the Cynthia Duff Plaza walking through there, and there's so those potentially side facades might be eligible too for some repairs or maintenance if council proceeds that way, I presume. All right. Any closing questions or comments?
I mean, I think as I've been on council, it seems like the front facades have mostly gotten shored up now, and there are some opportunities to look. I do agree that the rear facades, especially of that stretch of Main Street, are almost like the front, and especially since we're trying to encourage a sort of downtown gateway feel as you cross the tracks. I do think that seems like a logical step. I mean, covering those very visible rear facades. So I have no problem with that. Gloria you had thoughts, maybe you'll cover them, Gloria, about if we if we allow maintenance to be covered, but we also have a grant that comes in that same application cycle that's not only doing maintenance, but is reverting a historical accuracy or something like that, that might get preference over a maintenance only request. And I think maybe some of that ordering could be considered. But those are my thoughts.
Other thoughts?
Echo brought up the thing about that south area near the parking lot that does become sort of a second base for the downtown area. So seeing what we can do about that area, I'm not sure how deep to go into maintenance. So I would be looking for some guidance from staff on that, but shoring that up and making it more attractive. If we do want to make sure that we are considering upper levels being livable at some point, perhaps there's some additional requirement that we might want to add about what happens to second stories. But I would agree also that we would want to make sure that the facade piece gets priority before what happens at the rear.
Any other comments? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion on one of the options that are presented in the staff report or a modification of one of the options.
Well, it's sort of interesting when we think about the rear of the building. We're primarily focused on the buildings facing the city parking lot. So, but we've got a host of other businesses that their rear of the building goes back into an alley. And so would we want to include those buildings also for rear facade clearance? And just to think a little bit outside the box, several of us have had a chance to tour the city of Marion and some of the improvements they've made in their alleys is absolutely fantastic. I never thought I would say there is a beautiful alley, but what they have done there is just creating more public space. So that's not necessarily relevant to this, except that there are examples of cities our size that have really reimagined that space. And so as we have sort of gone through and taken care of the front of a lot of these buildings, there may be some opportunity to do something really creative with the alleys. So, great thoughts.
One thing that I would be concerned about, and I think this maybe goes to what Mr. Mormon was saying about the windows. The second story windows become important if you want to have that housing up there. And so doing things that damage or remove historic elements, I don't know that we should be incentivizing that because that leaves our options open for having those kinds of downtown activities that we have set we out. And Rhonda mentioned that I had talked to her in our meetings about the possibility of prioritizing the facades. And I guess what I would say to that is that we have guidelines right now, and if you add the maintenance as a third category after the other two, which take priority, that to me would acknowledge that this is primarily for historic elements, but we also recognize that buildings themselves are historic. And I don't know, Tim, your point about the alleys I think is important, and I don't know that I would want to just say buildings on the city, the rear facades. I do think limiting it to buildings that are contributing to the historic district will get the oldest buildings, the ones that need the shoring up the most, and the maintenance activities the most.
Okay, is there a motion?
I have a motion, but I'm not sure where it fits really. Do you want us to take parts of option 1 and parts of option 2, or?
I think I'm open to any motion that council wants to put on the table.
Okay, well, I'm going to combine them if that's okay. So I would move that we ask staff to come back with language that expands the grant program to cover rear facades of buildings that contribute to the downtown historic district, and expand the grant's language to cover structural maintenance of those buildings with the understanding that current design guidelines or grant guidelines will be the priority, and maintenance would be, I don't know, third on the list. Does that make sense? After those other grant projects.
For a second.
Second.
So your motion stipulates structural maintenance.
And that's why I asked Kelly what that is, and I would say it's not Kelly would engage in or Benjamin or somebody in planning would engage in discussions with inspections about what that would entail. Is that?
Yeah, I'd have to respond to that motion and come back with a list. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just not comfortable saying maintenance unless you literally mean anything is eligible for a grant. So if it's anything below, and if it's any definition below anything, then I want more precise terms. So we'll know what we're communicating to our audience in downtown. Set reasonable expectations that that's going to be funded.
So staff will return with essentially some description descriptors of what structural maintenance means to them?
Yeah.
All right. Any further, is there a second on that motion? I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Maybe I didn't write it down right. So you said expand grants to cover rear facades of buildings that are contributing to the historic district. Was the structural maintenance limited to historic buildings, or was it for all buildings?
That was also limited to those.
Okay. So your motion is to expand the program for contributing historic buildings for both maintenance and rear facades.
Yes.
That's the extent of what. Okay. Expanding, because neither of those activities are eligible for anybody now. Neither of those activities are currently eligible for any type of building. So you're expanding the activities to apply only to contributing historic buildings.
Yeah. Yes. The first, we're not making changes to the first two categories of grant
I got it.
applications.
And I'm going to be supportive of this. Let me come back to my first comment. This is in the scope of our budget, this is relatively not. So let's just keep in perspective. This is not a particularly generous grant program.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very small. So I really don't care what we do with it too much because it's pretty small numbers. And again, $25,000 gets you very little in the way of anything with your building. So I redid my siding in my building this year. I redid the roof. These are big projects. $25,000 doesn't even get you started. So as we think about this, I think the council is interested in this. Thinking about the amount of money is going to be really valuable. Otherwise, this is going to be just a program that doesn't get a lot of utilization. So I'm supporting this.
Okay. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Anything else you need from Ms. Kelly or the council on this one?
I don't think so.
All right, thank you. Move on, item number 35.
I did want to just comment for those of you who are wondering, Mr. Mormon's building is a contributing building in the district, if you didn't already know that.
All right, very good. Move on, item number 35, voluntary annexation in West Ames.
Tonight, we're doing an annexation initiation. This is always a two-step process for council. One, you accept the application, and then two, we start the hearing process. What's unique tonight is that we own city property in the proposed annexation, and it's to our benefit to proceed, just to bring our city parkland into the city. So not only is the proposal consistent with Plan 2040 and cleans up some essentially island areas, it also helps promote our funds. So we're recommending to move forward. And uniquely, it's 100% voluntary. There's no 80-20 action necessary. So it actually will be a fairly efficient and quick annexation process as well, which is also unusual. So again, we're recommending move forward, and we'll be back to you as early as the beginning of September to finalize the annexation.
So Kelly, I have to ask this question. So I love voluntary annexations. Involuntary annexations are hard, but if you look forward in terms of future annexations, where by accepting this on a voluntary basis now, there is a downside in terms of future annexations where we would need to leverage these properties for an 80-20 involuntary annexation.
There really isn't a way to use that, even if you want to. The way this territory is between Ontario and Lincoln, we're filling in that whole section, and there's nothing else touching that we would really want to bring in at this point in time. So in this case, there isn't really any calculus there that would really matter.
Okay, I'm thinking long term.
Yeah, in this case, this is the perfect fill-in annexation. Nothing to discuss.
Great. Thanks.
Further questions? I will open up public comment. Is there anyone who wants to address council on this item tonight? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Is there a motion on resolution to accept voluntary annexation application and include 2 City of Ames parcels?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Kelly. We'll move on to item number 36. Motion approving denying a Class C retail license for Solea 217 South Duff. Chief.
Good evening. Some of this may be a little bit of a repeat because we did discuss this a few meetings ago. So, as you know, state alcoholic beverages license and permits must receive approval from the local authority, which is you. On June 11th, you were asked to consider a proposal by the Department of Revenue Alcoholic Beverages Division, or ABD, with regards to Solea. They had four compliance check failures in actually a 6-month period. And the question before you was if you preferred that ABD move forward with revocation proceedings or potentially moved into some other agreement where they would license. At that time, your decision was to tell ABD to go ahead and move forward with revocation proceedings. So the reason I'm here tonight is now the license is up for renewal, so they've made that renewal application, which was not the case in June. And so, again, this is a little bit of a repeat. A review of our records showed those four compliance check failures in that 6-month period of time. And for those reasons, and because the code actually states that a fourth violation involving the sale of alcohol to a person under legal age within 3 years shall result in revocation of the license. So my recommendation is the same as it was before, to deny the renewal of the application based on those four compliance checks.
Thank you. Questions?
Chief, it seems like we don't have a choice. Right? This is not, sometimes we have discretionary decisions, but the way the code is structured, if we're going to act consistently with our code, don't we have to revoke tonight?
Well, technically, no. You could vote to renew the license application. However, ABD is still moving forward, and they've already served them with that revocation. And they will, I believe that they've already filed the appeal. They'll continue to operate under appeal like we've seen before. But yeah, technically you could, vote to renew the license. It's just ABD is already started revocation proceedings.
It just seems like the plain language means that we sort of have to follow the code. But and then the final question I always ask is, do you feel like what we're doing tonight is consistent with how we've treated similar types of infractions?
Yeah, this is exactly how we've treated other businesses. Okay. And the code really is that is more for ABD in the revocation versus license review.
Okay.
Type thing. So there's a little bit of a distinction there.
Yep.
Other questions? Open up public comment. If anyone wants to address council on this topic. You introduce yourself and you may begin.
Good evening, Council. My name is Katie Scott. I am here on behalf of Solea tonight. I believe that Council was in receipt of my letter from so like the Chief said, this is going to be a little bit repetitive, but our position is that this request by the Chief is premature because of that appeal that's pending. It's possible at this point that the second violation will be overturned, which would make the third a second and the fourth a third, in which case this is all moot, essentially. And that process will be dispositive of this whole issue. And to Mr. Cotton's point, I do agree with the Chief that the council is not compelled at this point to deny the renewal. I without having done a deep statutory dive, I would agree that I interpret the code to more so govern the state and the ABD rather than the city's obligation. Just briefly, I know that the council is aware of the business interest here, that is a building that has struggled to maintain any longevity. And Celaya has been more successful than new businesses in the last couple decades, really. This issue, if you want to call it that, has been an active issue. It's been open since March, so we're approaching 6 months, and there haven't been further violations despite the continued operation. So I think at this point, Celaya knows it's on thin ice. It's working on this appeal. It's working with the APP. And so for that, these reasons, I believe that at this point, the request by the chief is premature, and to just simply let the administrative process play itself out, it will be resolved one way or the other. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, well, close public input. Council? Any motion?
I just want to clarify something, and maybe Chief or Mark can answer this, but I think if we deny the 12-month license and then the license is not revoked at the state level, that Celaya can apply for an 8-month license. I don't know whether they can apply again for 12 months, but they could at least apply again if something changes at the state level. Okay, thank you.
Further questions? Otherwise, entertain motion.
I'll move alternative one.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Alternative is to deny.
I'm sorry, Mayor, deny the renewal application. And,
Thank you.
and maybe just to Ms. Scott, appreciate the advocacy of your client. And there are lots of compelling reasons in every situation of why we should do something different. My challenge is that when we start down the path of not acting consistently in these matters, we just open up a huge Pandora box. And so I think that when we take a stance of consistency, that sends a clear message to those who serve alcohol that law enforcement means business and we need to act consistently. So.
Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Motion carried. Okay, we'll move on. Item 37, water pollution control facility reduction modifications. No?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This project, the modifications to achieve the requirements of the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy, is a project that I first started talking with Council about probably 10 years ago. The Nutrient Reduction Strategy was adopted in 2013. And so what we're considering tonight is an award of a construction contract. So with me this evening is Will Branwall, our assistant director, and Travis Anderson, our consultant. He's been our project manager for Strand Associates. We gave you a lot of detail in the council action form, so we're going to try to keep the conversation at a pretty high level, but we're going to follow your lead if there's areas that you'd like us to dive into a little more detail.
Good evening, council members. So I'm going to start this presentation. This image shows the overview of the wastewater treatment system of Ames facility. The Ames Water Pollution Control Facility is considered an advanced secondary treatment facility, which usually utilize the trickling filters in the entire process of treatment of wastewater. And this facility was built in 1989, and since then, this facility has done an impeccable record of getting the compliance permit with NPDES. And according to National Association of Clean Water Agencies, our Ames WPCF is the second longest compliance record wastewater treatment plant in the nation. and we should be proud of that because of our maintenance and facility staff who are doing best of their best work. But there are some challenges currently in our facility. This facility was originally designed to treat the organic load. So that's what the trickling filter usually does. But it was not designed for the nutrient removal, which is like nitrogen and phosphorus. Coming to the removal reduction plan, so in our current plan for wastewater, the current removal efficiency for nitrogen is 36% and for phosphorus is 19%. But according to the Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy, which was adopted in 2013, there is a mandated rule that the nitrogen removal should be up to 67% and phosphorus should be 75%. So, concluding, our facility is like cutting fall short of the reduction mandates, which is done by Iowa Nutrient Reduction Strategy. And that's why we need the enhancement or improvement in our plan. So when we are moving fully to the nutrient removal program, the treatment filters will no longer will be having a role over there and will be removed. And the timing of that removal is very much critical. The plastic media, which you can see, those are the medias which play a very important part of those filters, and those are now 35 years old. According to manufacturers, the anticipated life of those media is around 25 to 30 years, and the replacement cost is 12 million to 15 million dollars. So there's a lot of money to invest, and considering that the trickling filters will ultimately be torn down, and is one of the several considerations that we went into the timing of the nutrient reduction modification project. But I also want to mention, beside the trickling filters aging problem, there are other very important upgrades in the treatment system, such as like electrical upgrades, which is needed throughout the facility. All the headwork requirements, which includes like grit removal processes, screening treatment processes, which needs comprehensive updates.
All right. So, talking a little bit more about the specific project on the agenda tonight. This is an aerial photo of the current site, largely very similar to the original construction from the late 80s. And it was decided during the facility planning effort to split this project into two separate phases. The first phase, of which we're discussing the details of tonight, and then a second phase approximately 10 years from now. So this diagram just shows schematically how the phase one improvements will be implemented. And one of the primary reasons we mentioned was replacing those aging trickling filters. And to do that, the plant will transition to an activated sludge system over the course of these two phases. And the benefit of that system is to remove those nutrients, the nitrogen and the phosphorus, and it'll also be an energy-saving treatment process. It will be designed to operate on low oxygen, and that will overall improve energy performance of the plant. And then another very significant component of this project is replacing screening with removal, and that will allow additional flow to enter the plant and increase the capacity so that the city can continue expanding and attracting new business. And then on phase two, the two additional activated sludge trains will go online, and that will allow those trickling filters to be demolished. And at that point, there'll be additional space for expansion in the future. A lot of what we're doing in these two phases are setting up the treatment plant to be able to be expanded in future conditions beyond this 20-year planning horizon. So we really tried to take into account how we can continue to maximize the footprint of this site while meeting those nutrient reductions. And that again will be accomplished through these two phases.
So in May of last year, we presented to you the facility plan that described how the project would move forward. Following your concurrence with that plan, we submitted it to the Iowa DNR, who did give us their approval as well. And that's what triggered us to move forward with the detailed design of the improvements. So that work wrapped late spring. We issued a notice to bidders, and 2 bids were received on that. Low bid came from Woodruff Construction at a price of $53,370,000. Woodruff is a firm that worked at the water pollution control facility in the past. We've had good experience with them. Strand has had good experience with them as well. The city's finance director reviewed all of their financial information, felt that financially they represented a firm that we would be okay doing business with. And so our determination was that Woodruff was the lowest responsible bidder on that request for bids.
So breaking down that cost from the low bid of $53.37 million, Table 3 in your packet shows a comparison of our engineer's cost opinion versus the bid price for the major components of the project. And you can see that in several of the categories, there's a slight increase over the cost opinion or a lower value than the cost opinion. But the main number that jumps out to you there as far as the difference in the reason or the significant reason for why this project was over $8 million over the engineer's cost opinion is the electrical component at approximately $6 million over the cost opinion. So we have been doing research into why that happened, because we appreciate that this puts the city in a difficult position of having a project that bid substantially over the cost opinion. So we wanted to understand the rationale behind that. So just kind of diving into that electrical difference, really it's been the electrical market that's been most disrupted by supply chain issues, especially since COVID. That has pushed lead times on major electrical equipment from what we would typically see of maybe 3 to 6 months in order for equipment to get on site. In some cases, we're seeing equipment not able to get to the site until after 2 years from the start of construction. So that's providing a lot of uncertainty in both the pricing and the timing of when the labor will actually occur. And part of that uncertainty on the timing is tied with the fact that the contractors are not able to get firm pricing from suppliers as well. So that is an issue that can lead to increased costs. We also see the electrical market is highly susceptible to the volatility in the commodity markets. In particular, we see that copper is at an all-time high, and some are projecting that to increase. And there's a general shortage of electrician labor. So when you kind of combine all those factors and take into account that there's just so much work occurring right now, a lot of the electrical contractors are very busy. They are factoring those pricing risks into their bid, and that we believe is the significant reason for why that item is so much higher. And just in general, there is a tremendous amount of work occurring right now in the water and wastewater industry. There are more large projects than ever happening right now, not just in Iowa but throughout the Midwest. Other neighboring states are trying to deal with the same issues that you're seeing here in Iowa, facing both aging infrastructure and more stringent regulations. So there are multiple projects greater than $100 million happening all throughout the Midwest right now. And what we've seen, especially in the last year, is that it's very common to only receive 2 bids on these projects. I know there was some questions about why there weren't more bidders, But with that general busyness in the industry, we're seeing limited numbers of contractors bidding projects, and that trickles down into the subcontractors and the other trades as well, where you're only getting a couple of electrical or a couple of mechanical contractors bidding. But with that said, I do believe that Woodruff, the low bid contractor, really did their due diligence on this project. I've honestly never seen a contractor ask more questions during the bidding process. And they were calling me basically on a quarterly basis over the last couple of years, just checking in, wanting to understand the time frame. And then once the project advertised, they really dove in. They had a whole team that went to the project site, and again, they asked me several questions. So I do believe that they did not just simply throw a number at this project. That they really put a lot of work into coming up with their bid. So from that standpoint, we've come to the conclusion that we believe that this is the price of the work at this particular time, given this bidding climate.
So in evaluating the bids and trying to put together options for you to consider moving forward, we tried to look at as many different possible ways to move forward as we could. And that's what you saw outlined in the council action form. So I think maybe we'll just talk through each of those options at a really high level. And again, if you want us to dive in more detail, please do ask.
All right. So option one is reject the bids and rebid. So in this case, you would rebid the project at some point in the near future. I do believe, after having conversations with numerous contractors, that you are unlikely to attract more bidders than the two that bid on this project. I've had conversations with other contractors that had expressed interest prior to the advertisement of this project, and they had just ended up stating that they were too busy, that they had too much on their plate. So I don't think that you would get more bidders, and rebidding the project would allow the suppliers to requote all of their equipment and materials. And it's my opinion that it's highly likely that if you were to simply rebid the project, it would likely be 10 to 15% higher than the bids that you received in June. Option 1A is similar. It would be rebidding the project, but with some of those elements deferred into the second phase 10 years from now. And all of the components that we put in this phase that could be deferred were included for a reason. They improved the constructability and lower the cost in phase 2. So they would be things that would reduce the need for bypass pumping or temporary electrical during that phase 2 project. So if you were to push those down the road to phase 2, it would increase the overall cost of the two phases combined.
Yeah, so option 1B that we looked at was to reject the bids, redesign, and then rebid. We did, through the design process, try to weave value engineering into all of the decisions that we made. For example, we were originally looking at a different treatment technology other than the simultaneous nitrification, denitrification that we went with. As we moved through the design phase, the cost of that was higher than what we ultimately went with. It was slightly more efficient in terms of its nutrient removal capabilities, but it was more expensive. And as we went through the design process, it seemed like every time we were asking for cost updates from the proprietary vendor that had this system, that they just kept going up and up. And we felt like we didn't really have good control over that. And so that's why we made the decision to switch to the technology that we're using. It's more of an open source type of a system. So we don't feel that there's an opportunity to make a meaningful enough change in the scope to warrant rejecting and rebidding. There may be some possibilities, though, to do some things via change order, and I'll touch on those in just a moment for you. Option 2 was to possibly reject this and then look at coming back in some number of years and do the entire project as a single phase. There would be some benefits to that. It would give you a chance to build up some funds in the sewer fund balance. There would also be some degree of cost savings by reducing, say, the number of times a contractor needs to mobilize. But there's some risks as well. And part of that is what Parul was talking about with the life of the trickling filters. I'm concerned that those filters are on borrowed time. We would be taking a risk if we didn't move forward with getting some redundant capacity there. And I really would not like to spend $12 to $15 million to repack those and then just throw it away in 7 to 10 years. There's also some benefits that we get while moving ahead with this. It really wasn't a deciding factor to do it in multiple phases, but a benefit that we're going to get is an increase in the hydraulic capacity and the organic capacity of the plant so that we can accept higher levels of loading from growth in the community. Option 3 was to attempt to lower the cost through change orders. So instead of rejecting and redesigning the project, we could attempt to negotiate with the contractor post-award. There was one element that we know for certain that we will be bringing back to you via a change order if you award. There was an error in the pricing of a specific piece of equipment that was included in the contractor's bid. And Woodruff has told us in writing that they would agree to a $200,000 deduct to correct that pricing that was transcribed incorrectly. We gave you a whole long list of things that could be considered. Ultimately, there were 4 items that we identified that seemed like they might make sense. I do want to be clear that the dollar amounts we showed you in the council action form are our estimates of the value of that work. It's not firm pricing from Woodruff, so we can't guarantee how much of a credit we would actually get. But those 4 items we identified in the council action form was to remove some vertical laminate ceiling tile, to remove 2 exterior canopies in the administration building, to eliminate the in-floor heat in the maintenance shop in the garage area, and to eliminate a small fire alarm system that's in the garage portion of the raw pump station. And the reason that we feel comfortable with that, it was required based on the way that space was designed and used currently, but with the modifications that we're doing, it would no longer be required. So we're comfortable with that elimination. Option 4 was to award the contract and then look to adjust other capital projects to help offset the cost of it and mitigate the impact to ratepayers. There were 2 projects that we are suggesting that be considered for modification. The first is the watershed-based nutrient reduction modification projects. Those are budgeted $200,000 a year. Half of that money is earmarked for the edge of field projects, like the saturated buffers, the nitrifying bioreactors. And we do have partners on those projects that are contributing 60+% of the cost. So that portion we're recommending be retained, but the other $100,000 per year is money that we do not have contributing funds towards. And so there's a little less of a bang for the buck, if you will, for those portions of that funding. And so we would recommend that be scaled back. The other project is renovation in addition to the technical services complex. That's the home to the water meter and laboratory services divisions. What we're recommending is that project as it currently exists be eliminated. We're going to reevaluate some of the essential renovation needs of that facility and come back to you with a different plan. It may be rolled into the operating budget, or it may come back as a newly scaled CIP project. So option 5 would be to award and look to adjust sewer rates to compensate for the increased cost. And when we ran the rate models, if we did nothing with any of the other options, no change orders, no reductions to CIP projects, then my recommendation to you would be that we do an unplanned 7% rate increase effective next summer. That would coincide with a planned 9% water increase and a 1.5% electric increase. So the resulting cumulative impact, and this is if we did nothing with any of those other options, the resulting cumulative impact to a customer's bill would be about 4.25%. If we incorporate some of those other options that were described as well, that would help to reduce the dollar amount of any rate adjustments that might be needed. The finance director and I looked at rates, and I think when we come back to you with a rate workshop the next time around, we want to look at a different approach. Instead of doing alternating years, look at doing smaller increases every year in both water and sewer. We're not looking for any direction from you specifically on that tonight. I'm just letting you know that we're looking at that and evaluating it. And then option 6, which is ultimately what we're being recommended tonight, is to do a combination of those things. So it would be to award the contract to Woodruff, to pursue change orders to potentially eliminate those 4 items that we discussed, plus the $200,000 credit that Woodruff has already agreed to, and to modify the CIP to reduce the scale of the watershed-based nutrient reduction projects and to eliminate the TSC renovation as it currently exists. So some of the way too early rate projections that Corey and I worked through is suggesting that the magnitude of the rate increase that we would be able to present to you helped in part to some considerable PFAS class action claims that we're anticipating receiving in the spring. We're optimistic that the combination of water and sewer rate increase next summer would be in the same magnitude of the impact as the 9% water rate alone that we had currently discussed. So that's our evaluation of the bids, the consolidated recommendation to you. Happy to answer any questions that you may have for any of the 3 of us.
Questions?
John, at what point would we be looking at being possibly in violation of our permit?
So in the facility plan that DNR approved, actually based on the 2018 study that we did, we told them a 20-year plan. So it would be 20 years from that point in time. So technically that would be the point where it would come. Now our current permit that we have, there's a nuance in NPDES permitting that they can't put a requirement in a 5-year permit that exceeds the 5 years. So with a planned compliance date that's more than 5 years out, they can't put that in our permit right now. So what they have in there is an obligation for us to make progress. That's what the permit says right now.
So first of all, welcome, and I need practice with your first name again.
It's pronounced as Parul, P-A-R-U-L. Parul.
Parum.
Yes.
Okay, welcome. This
Thank
is your
you.
first time.
Thank you.
Welcome. And Travis, welcome.
Thank you.
John, the percentage of this project that is going for compliance with the Nutrient Reduction Act, as opposed to what we need to do to upgrade our facility anyway, how would you delineate that?
Yeah, Travis and I were trying to, just off the top of our head, estimate that. I would say roughly half, if not a little more, is related to things that are not specifically nutrient reduction related. like the bar screens at the front of the plant. They're certainly impacted by the nutrient reduction strategy because the types and sizing of the screens that we put in is dictated by the type of nutrient reduction technology that we adopt. But the screens, the grit removal system are at the end of their useful life and need to be replaced.
So just to clarify, so of this project, half of it we wouldn't need to do but for the Nutrient Reduction Act. Am I saying that correctly?
I think that's fair to say.
Okay. And one sentence on this, I promise, Council. I've been fighting this for 10 years. This is the biggest boondoggle I'm aware of, the mandate on cities. And in my research, I have found the highest amount of attribution to municipal nitrogen to the Gulf is 11% of what goes to the Gulf. So all of our Iowa cities will do this at a budget. The one Register reported in excess of $1 billion with a B dollars, and it will have negligible impact on the Gulf. That's a fact. So all of this work, all of the tax dollars that are going to this will have relatively no impact on the Gulf. And people should be outraged that this is going on. Those dollars could be better spent doing other things that actually benefit the public. And it's sad that we're looking at taking away money from the Edge of Field project because that's something that we know actually decreases nitrogen going into the Gulf. Mm-hmm. So we shouldn't be lowering that. We should be increasing that. But that's sort of, that ship has sailed and we're locked into this boondoggle. And so now we have to sort of see this thing through in his best stewardship as we can. And in my time on council, I have never seen a disparity like this between the engineer's projection and the bid. So $8.6 million, that's a big spread, even on a project of this size. And so, Travis, thanks for coming. And I need to have a better understanding of why, even with this drill down on the electrical, why we could get to that kind of spread, because all the information that you gave us today, that was known before the engineer's bid was done. In other words, the knowledge of the uncertainty of copper and all of these things, this has been something we've been dealing with for the last probably 5 years. So help us understand as a council how to think about the engineer's bid today.
Sure. Yep. No, I appreciate that question. So, correct. We knew that inflation was definitely a concern. You know, we'd been talking with staff about that since the beginning of this project. And in fact, we included inflation factors into our cost opinion. We, even this spring in our projects that bid in February, March, and April, had not seen the magnitude of this increase in electrical work. So my opinion after kind of reviewing everything, reviewing our past projects, is just the increase in the workload that contractors are seeing. They have reached a point where they can monetize that risk into their bid, whereas perhaps in the past, they just took on that risk in order to get the project. And I think that's what we saw in the electrical portion of this project. And I think it was specifically electrical just because that's where, as I mentioned, we're seeing the most volatility and the most instances of not being able to get the equipment when they're expecting it. So because that's the market with the highest risk, that's where we saw the increase. But, you know, I'll just kind of reiterate, we are looking back when we develop our cost opinions. We're looking at our most recent jobs and we're adjusting our unit prices accordingly. And even our most recent bids early this year, we didn't see that big jump. So that was new. This was new information to us. And, you know, we're certainly trying to dig in to see, you know, exactly what is going on in this market. And I appreciate that doesn't help the city today, but it was a new phenomenon for us, and we do a lot of wastewater work in Iowa and throughout the Midwest.
And I appreciate that. And you have a lot of standing here. And my questions, I hope, are grace-filled. It's just, this is a big number for me to wrap my brain around. And it just seems like, so with this project, you've got materials, you have labor, and you have profit. Those are your three components, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just hard for me to see that this could be a total surprise in this engineering estimate. That's the part. In other words, I could live with the fact that we have two bidders, although I'm sad that there was only one in Iowa and the other one was from another state. That's hard for me to grasp. But the fact that we have this disparity between the engineering estimate and the next lowest bidder of $8.6 million, that's the part that's harder for me to grab. And so normally, if we go through this bidding process and the bids are highly discordant with the engineering estimate, we just say, well, that didn't work out, and we rebid. So, but here, you're pretty strong in suggesting that that actually is a bad idea, that to rebid actually could make this far worse. And so I'm really caught between my inclination to say, well, let's just drop back and rebid this and hope for better outcomes. But I'm counterbalanced by your counsel saying, no, that could actually make things worse. So could you help us just think through a little bit more of why rebidding this is such a risky process?
Yeah, we've spoken with several contractors, subs, and suppliers about rebidding this, and the unanimous reaction that we got from all those entities is that basically the city should expect higher pricing if they rebid. And again, that is just because of the workload that's out there right now, because of the volatility in pricing. It will give all the vendors another opportunity to escalate their pricing due to the progression of time. When we work through this process, we do get pricing from for all the major equipment, and that allows us as an engineering firm to basically to hold them to that pricing, because then if they escalate it on bid day, we can go back to them. We have that relationship, and we can say, well, why didn't you give us accurate information? If you rebid that now, they will have a legitimate opportunity to say, well, that pricing was good in June of 2024. Now time has passed, Travis, we have to increase our costs just because our own costs have increased, and we have to pass that on. So that's the reasoning why I do believe if you rebid it, I do believe that the pricing would be higher.
Okay, thank you for your answers today.
Yeah, I would also comment that getting the pricing like Travis just described that they did, that's how we discover that pricing discrepancy on that one piece of equipment. Because in evaluating the bids, Travis asked the contractor for pricing on that equipment, and they gave a price back that was $200,000 higher than what Travis had previously heard from the supplier. And it turned out it was a transcription error in the supplier's price to Woodruff. It wasn't anything Woodruff did. It was just a transcription error, but that's how they caught that.
I'm a little confused because I thought I heard you say that the electrician says they can't give firm prices on equipment because of a 2-year delivery, but yet you're getting hard prices to use in your estimates. So help us understand the discrepancy in that answer.
So the wastewater treatment equipment itself has been more stable and more. We have a higher ability to, predict that. If you look at the table 3 again, so that division 40 through 46, that $11 million item of the project. That we have some greater control over in working with our equipment vendors. The electrical components are a little bit different. That market is so I guess it's so active right now that that market will not provide firm pricing. As far as, generators, VFDs, motor control centers, they basically say, we can't tell you when you're going to get it, and we're not able to lock in pricing. So that it's really a different market.
So I'm hearing you say is that basically there's a heck of a lot of blue sky and guessing on the part of an electrician, and they just threw some huge numbers in, hoping that they're going to be enough to cover the cost of some equipment, which they can't get prices on. Is that true? And so so the city becomes a victim of that inability.
That's my opinion. Yes.
I'm going to switch gears. In your diagram, you show that the 4 trickling filters stay on site until phase 2. Are those still active?
Yes, they are all in service during that time, and that's where we get that additional capacity right away in phase 1.
So we've heard that it's going to cost $12 to $15 million to replace the media. There's no guarantee that they're going to make it through that. So what happens in 5 years if all of a sudden we find out that those need media replacement? Are basically the city looking at a 12, 15 or $20 million investment to take care of that? Because it's 10 years before you got you're putting in phase 2.
So there is some flexibility built into this system. They do not need to run all 4 trickling filters. And in fact, they could go down to, quite possibly go down to 2 trickling filters with this upgrade once the new aeration tanks are online. So if they start to experience some catastrophic failure in one of the filters, then perhaps we would need to talk about escalating the time frame for phase 2, but it wouldn't be an automatic need to spend the $12 to $15 million on day 1 when that happened. There would be some time to react and adjust the treatment configuration accordingly.
Yeah, the way those work is the wastewater, it literally trickles through that corrugated plastic, and the biofilm grows on that media. And the thickness of that biofilm, is related to how much waste that it's actually removing. By moving a portion of that loading off the trickling filters into the activated sludge, it's reasonable to assume that the weight of that mass growing on there is going to be less. And so we're backing some of the stress off of that media by moving some of it into the activated sludge process instead.
I don't pretend to understand what you said. I trust you implicitly. Just the point that's trying to tease out is if those are still being used, what else does council need to be aware of that may be a bullet that we're looking at, a fiscal bullet essentially, down the path? What I'm hearing is those trickling filters, at least 2 of them have to be operational for this plant to operate when you do phase 1.
In phase 1, yeah, I think that's true.
Yes, that's accurate.
Last question. You said copper's at an all-time high. We have basically people throwing darts at the wall, throwing numbers at stuff. What options exist, if any, to try and eliminate that blue sky and what I consider to be potentially a very high premium that the city and our ratepayers are paying for what appears to be someone trying to basically they're gambling, and they're basically couching their bets. And if I were in their position, I'd be doing the same thing. So I'm not being critical of them, but the point is, there's a $6 million bust between your opinion on the cost and the bid pricing. There's got to be a reason. I mean, you couldn't be that far off.
I mean, one strategy that you could look at in the future is procurement of those types of equipment, where the city basically becomes the contractor and buys those portions, and then that procurement contract could then be handed off to the contractor when the main project gets bid. Those that could be investigated as an option.
So for example, all the copper wire, I'm sure there's probably lots of it and lots of big stuff that you're using to drive, motors and other things. If that's not all needed right away.
Yeah, that's where it becomes very difficult.
But the point is that they don't have to buy 1,800, I'm making this up, 1,800 spools of copper from day one. I mean, they could also try, if they're at all-time high, it's probably going to go down too. Okay, all right, very good. All right. Any other questions?
One more question. Could you go back to the slide where you're looking at the percentages on the nitrogen and phosphorus removal? And what I'd like to clarify for the community. Yeah, great. That's what I want. So the system that we're putting in place, will it be, can you tell us what the percentage of removal efficiency will be? This tells us what our current is and what the requirement is, but our new system, will it be just 67%? Will it be 69%? And the reason why I'm asking this is when the city went through the process of evaluating a filtration system when we had a coal burning facility, we looked at adding these filters on our system versus going to natural gas. And I was not serving on council, but I attended all the meetings during that time. And it was fascinating to me, the gamesmanship that went into that, the additional percentage of removal incrementally added a great deal of cost. My concern is that 5 years, 10 years down the road, if the bureaucrats decide that we haven't made enough impact on the Gulf and they increase that removal and they increase the required removal. So can you just tell us where these filters will play in terms of the requirement?
Yeah, I don't have the exact percentages because they'd be in the modeling results, but they're going to be in the magnitude of 90% removal efficiency.
Oh, so it's going to be well above the requirement.
Yeah.
I missed that.
It's a biological process, so it depends. It's very site specific on how well it will perform. But yes, we certainly expect the removal efficiencies to exceed those values there. Yeah.
And 90% for both this nitrogen and phosphorus at 90%.
In that ballpark.
That's helpful.
Again, yeah, we have some detailed modeling that we did during facility planning that would have those exact numbers. But at the end of the day, it is a living process, and the ability to fine tune that will ultimately dictate the exact percentage.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's going to do much better in the summer and much worse in the winter. The removal efficiencies that we have to meet are annual averages, so that's what we're targeting.
Yeah, thank you.
John, do you have any idea how many water treatment facilities are already meeting the required percentages?
Oh, it's been probably a year since I've seen that. There were originally 110 municipal facilities that needed to do this. The last list I saw is at least a year old, and there were about 15 of them that were already in compliance. Not that it helps our discussion, but misery loves company. The city of Cedar Rapids bid their nutrient removal work the same day that we did ours. Their estimate was give or take $270 million, and their low bid came in at $350 million.
That's helpful. Thanks for sharing that.
That's a huge.
All right, we'll open up public comment. Is there anyone that wants to address council on this topic? All right, seeing none, we'll close public input. Closing questions or comments? Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion.
I just want to just offer some comments. What is helping me get to, I'm going to make a motion a moment to move alternative one. And just two comments. We are very blessed to have Woodruff in our community. It's a very respected organization. Your presentation tonight, Travis, has been amazingly helpful. I came in here with a lot of hard questions, and you've done a really good job. And Strand, is it Fox Strand or just Strand? I'm confused.
Our office here is Fox Strand.
It's Fox Strand. So we are very happy to have your organization in the community, and you've been a great partner with the city for many years. And I also want to just know with appreciation just how proud we are of the work you've done, John. And this is a legacy project for you. And so this is the kind of project that we'll look back on in decades to come and look back on and say, we did this right. And so part of getting to that place is asking these hard questions, but there's so much work that went on behind the scenes to get to this meeting tonight. And so we need to say thank you to you and your team for getting us here tonight. And I guess a final comment, we need to call out the organizations that are standing in the way of meaningful reduction in oxygen contribution to the Gulf. So Farm Bureau and other farm organizations that stand in the way of meaningful regulatory reform. If we are concerned about oxygen in the Gulf, there's a way of doing it, and it's with farm runoff, period. And we need to embrace that and not just pick on cities because they're an easy target. So with that, I'll move alternative one.
Second.
All right. Moving second and for discussion.
Second, your point about the Farm Bureau too. I mean, it's a good point to really look at where it's coming from. I mean, it doesn't help us with this decision, but.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Very good. Moving on, Item 38. Any questions for staff on the Story County Edge of Field project FY 2022-2023 bids?
And this isn't related to the fact that we need to cut that fund, right? Because we would have had the matching amount anyway.
We would have, yeah. This is a case we're talking with bidders who gave us some encouragement that there's a reasonable potential to see better pricing if we just rebid with a much longer construction period.
Thank you.
Is there a motion?
Move alternative one, that we reject the bid and direct staff to return to council with revised specifications to allow for a later construction deadline.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, move on to item number 39, hearing for approval of 2024-2029 consolidated plan, 2024-2025 annual action plan. Vanessa? Kelly?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you finally is, I'm sorry, did I say that out loud?
No, you didn't.
Is our 5-year consolidated plan and our 2024-25 annual action plan. We've had a lot of challenges with getting this project done, but I wanted to thank council, first of all, for their willingness to meet with the public so we can get our 5-year goals done, and also the public for participating and helping us derive our annual action plan. At the time that the council approved our projects, we had not received our allocation from HUD. It was really delayed this year. We didn't receive the allocations until May, and our plan is usually due May 17th. So we had to spend a lot of time getting those things into place. Also, I want to thank Iowa State University, especially Nora Laja-Hassan, for all of their help in trying to get this consolidated plan done. It was about 6 people working on this project, and everybody had a different section. So we also spent a lot of time making some adjustments to it as well, because some data came out at the last minute in June that I felt be added to the plan, just in case HUD says, go back and add it to the plan. So anyway, thank you for letting me just get that out. So what we have in front of you is where we've come out with what our goals are for the next year. I won't read through them all, but we want to continue to create and expand sustainable, affordable housing for low and moderate income households in our community. And that is, again, to increase the supply of single family and multifamily housing, reduce the cost burden from low income households, to maintain rental housing and home ownership housing, to strengthen our neighborhoods, continuing to acquire, demolish, and rehabilitate housing units that support homeowners, home buyers, and renters in obtaining and maintaining affordable housing, and strengthening neighborhoods by implementing programs that increase or improve public facility infrastructure and services in low and moderate income census tract. That was our main 5-year goal for addressing those who are low and moderate income. And then to address those who are not low and moderate income, we want to continue to do integrated, affordable, market rate, and low income housing together, remove slum and blight into reuse into new housing, support and address code enforcements of deteriorating housing, and remove slum and blight in floodplains and other hazardous areas. And so those were the 2 goals that we adopted for our 5-year plan. Now, just so you know that once this plan is submitted to HUD, we always have the option to make adjustments. We just need to get it submitted, get it approved. You always have that option as a council if you wanted to change anything. So it's not like it's set in stone. To switch over to our action plan, again, the funding that we received this year was less than what we had projected in our budget, especially our home dollars. Those went significantly down from when we started back in 2018-19 with 750,000. We're down now to just under $200,000. So I just wanted to bring to council's attention with that, we did make some adjustments to those programs. We didn't change the programs, but we had to reduce the funding because our funding allocation was reduced. So what we did, we continued with, of course, administration. We get 20% of that for that. And the public improvement program, the sidewalk repair program that you brought up, we took that program along with our renter affordability program, our single family rehab program, and we just took the dollars that we had and just distributed over those 3 programs. So we didn't eliminate any programs, we just reduced it by what we had available. And then for our home program, we have our administrative money. And one of the programs that we are interested in wanting to get started with are what is left of our home dollars, because we used just over $2 million to do our Light Tech project. We want to look at exploring to do a tenant-based rental assistance program. This program is very similar to the Section 8 program, where they help people with their rent. It's just for a shorter period of time, but it can help with deposit and help pay their rent for anywhere from 12 to 24 months. That way we can concentrate on our very poor who can't afford, maybe transitioning out of shelters, don't have the money to pay for rent. We're hoping to work with HUD and some other entitlements that are already doing this program, that we can bring this program successfully to Ames using the balance of our home dollars. So that's what we're proposing for that. And also we'll continue to, hopefully this fall, we're going to be finalizing our guidelines for our home art program that was already in our grant. It doesn't have to be repeated for this year and so forth. So that's kind of the outline for both our consolidated plan and our action plan. And we did, as required by HUD, put the program out for public comment. And we received 3 comments, actually, rather than 2. The 2 that we mentioned in the council action form, one was to just update some corrections to the plan, that was some old data that needed to be updated, and we did do that. And we also addressed the other requirement comment that talked about specific ideas for programming and did respond to both of those. While I was out on personal leave last week, we received another comment from Habitat for Humanity that we put up on the board for you, and it'll be passed out for your files. Apologize that did not get in the packet for that. And that was regarding utilizing home funds for a different project. At this time, we don't have to make that decision because the project that we have in there, we have money that we've been setting aside for the last couple of years to do a single family, one house out there, hopefully modular is what staff had been planning by using leftover home dollars. And so with that in mind, you can take those under consideration at the time. Doesn't have to be taken under consideration at this time. Right now, we have a plan in there to do a single family home, and that's what we have set aside for that. With that, the plan is to be submitted by HUD by April 16th. Once that is in, then HUD will review it. If they have any other changes they want us to make to it, we'll make at that time, and so they can get approved, and hopefully we can get started on our next year's program. And that's what I have at this time, and if you have any questions.
Questions? All right, declare the public hearing for 2029 consolidated plan and 2024 plan in connection with city's community development home programs to be open. Is there anyone who wants to address councils on this specific topic? Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing to be closed. Any questions for Vanessa? Entertain motion on resolution approving the 2024 to 2029 consolidated plan.
Move approval. Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Entertain motion on resolution approving the 2024 and 2025 annual action plan.
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 Very good. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Thanks for your work. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
All right, move on to item number 40. Agreement with consultant for up to $12,000 assist with hosting community conversations around homelessness. Hi, Paul.
Hello. So I will be brief, but I welcome any questions that you guys have at the end here. So this year, there's been a noticeable increase in the homeless population here in Ames. I think we're seeing this trend happen across the nation and cities as well. And homelessness is a very complex issue. And the reasons why people might become homeless can vary greatly. And so really the request before you here is part of just our quest to figure out what's happening, to better understand what's driving the increase in people becoming homeless, what services are being provided to those who are currently homeless, and what services are being provided to those who may be on the verge of homelessness. And so through engaging a consultant, we hope to really host some community-wide conversations around this topic, just to gain more knowledge around the issue and to bring the community together around this. We anticipate that there will be other funders who will be helping us with this as well. So this is really born out of kind of the asset conversations. And so we believe that Story County and United Way will also be partnering with us to really host these community conversations. And so the request before you is to use 12,000 of the allocated but undesignated funds to asset to help fund a facilitator to host these community conversations. And with that, I'll take any questions that you have.
Questions?
I have one. So we know that homelessness in Ames is, we're not in isolation.
Right.
That the trends and factors that influence Polk County, Marshall County, Boone County are going to affect Ames. And so will this coordinator also be in contact and communicating with those more regionally to understand sort of their trends and the factors that are impacting homelessness there? Because I think it's important as we think about ours, we think of it in the context of Central Iowa. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, great question. So I think our focus would be kind of locally here in Story County, but there is some effort at the state level as well to understand what's happening regionally. So Matt White has been hired by the Balance to do some gap analysis study on shelter services. And so that work is also happening alongside of this. And that report is going to be available in October-ish. And so we hope to capitalize on kind of what he's doing and to take kind of his work and add that to the conversation that we're having here as well to understand kind of how we are fitting into the regional context of this all. So, yeah.
And so from a timing perspective, when would you see proposals coming back to council for things that we could do to be of help?
Yeah, I think that I think we would start the conversations sooner than later. So really hoping in September we can start hosting some of these already. And I would assume maybe early winter. I think the plan, and this is to be fully scoped out, but the idea would be to hold several focus groups with different agencies, really just see what the appetite is for continuing this work and really building out an action plan. But I think that a lot of community members are looking to kind of come up with short-term solutions sooner than later. So I think that this beginning of winter is a reasonable time to be presenting something back to council.
Yeah, and I hope that as things go along, if there are opportunities for short-term steps that we could take. In other words, we don't have to solve everything right away. And so maybe we sort of lay this out. There are some things we can do immediately that might have some benefit. And then we look at some longer-term types of investments or policies. So I'm very supportive of this, but I just hope that we can do some things. If we're here a year from now and we haven't really done anything, that'll be sort of sad. So I hope that we can start looking for opportunities. But I know this is a problem nationally. I mean, you read the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, this is huge and everyone's scrambling for answers. And so the fit is going to be different in Portland versus Ames. So we're going to have different tools in the toolbox. We have different sets of problems. So I like how we're looking at trying to individualize the efforts here. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in talking to some of the service providers, I think there's an appetite to bring everybody together. And I think just by bringing people together and talking through what's being offered right now organically, there will be good partnerships that form through that. And just knowledge of where we can modify currently existing programs to make it work smoother together. So I think, you know, we might not report on those individual partnerships that exist, but I think just by bringing all the partners together, there's already great opportunity there.
And one final question. So when we think about the partners, is this a place where we could look at faith communities as having a role in this conversation?
Absolutely. That's part of the goal by keeping it, you know, community wide. We're really talking about anybody and everybody who is interested in contributing knowledge, experience to this.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yep.
Any other questions?
And can you remind us, this individual that you're hoping to hire also has experience with doing maybe some conversations with folks that are currently homeless and reaching out, getting those stories, understanding better who is part of our community right now?
Yeah, we don't have anybody identified right now, but it's definitely our preference that we would put that out there, that we would really prefer somebody who does have experience with that. For now, we're kind of just keeping it broad as saying community facilitator has experience with this work. But yeah, that definitely would be a preference that we're looking for.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion?
Move that we approve authorizing staff to explore, engage, and enter into an agreement with a consultant to host community conversations around homelessness for up to $12,000 from unallocated, undesignated FY 24-25 asset funds.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Pa.
Thanks.
All right, move on. Item number 41, entertain motion on second reading of ordinance updating enforcement provisions to Chapter 5B and Chapter 22A of the Ames Municipal Code.
Move on second.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. And item number 42, Chapter 28, electric rate modifications. Entertain motion to amend the Mark, I need some help. It's motion to amend, but amend what? We're amending the previous ordinance,
It's
correct?
just to amend.
Just a general.
Just a general amendment.
I think I'd like a little more
Motion
specificity
to-
for the minutes, please.
A motion to amend the ordinance by establishing that the rates and charges will become effective beginning with the bills mailed on November 1st, 2024.
Thank you.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. Those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, Mark. And I entertain a motion on third reading and adoption of ordinance number 4537 to change electric rates to adopt revenue neutral rate adjustments to better align with cost of service study recommendations, add optional time of use rates, and to adjust the large customer interruptible option on bill credits.
So moved.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to disposition of communications to council. There are 9 communications. First is a communication from Orrin Geisinger III and family regarding a request for delay in the 2126 State Avenue annexation process.
Are we already getting a
You
staff
already,
memo?
you already got another letter, so it's
Yeah.
the same concept. So
You
Planning
could-
and Housing will come back with a memo to you.
Yeah.
To explain what's being requested.
So we could just reach out and tell them we've already asked for a memo.
Yep. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Second is from Tuishimi Florence, request for healthy grocery store
Ouch.
options.
I replied to this email and kindly suggested they check out a lovely grocery store on Main Street called Wheatsfield.
Also, we have great farmers market here in town, and there are a number of CSAs that provide local healthy options too. So, but yeah, I don't know if we need to.
We
reach
could
out.
write the memo, maybe.
No, no,
We did. We
we
definitely
did. Yeah.
We took care of it. It's good.
It's been
Also,
responded.
with
I
I responded too.
with some of my projects this year, I will be kind of working on letting people know what our resources are around here because I think there's a not a lot of understanding of all that we have in Ames, and a lot of people they'll go around and look at what's in Des Moines instead of what's here.
Mhm.
And so that's one of my projects this year is to make sure the students are aware of what we have around here because we have a lot of great things around here.
Well, that sounds like not only a
Love
great
it.
project for students, but something we can try and capitalize and utilize for our entire community.
Absolutely.
Next is a email from Bob Hogg regarding input on changes to electric rates.
This was just for our info, wasn't it?
Information.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Next is an email from Betty Barton regarding indoor aquatics aerobics class.
We saw a response from Iowa State on this one not long ago.
Did those go to Betty or did they just come to us? Because we saw one from
Oh.
Brian and we saw one from Iowa State.
I believe.
The Iowa State
I think it was
one
addressed to her,
directed
right?
to her.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Next is a email from Jeff Bryant regarding tailgating in Stuart Smith Park at home football games. And also just, I would add that he's talking about, and I just want to say that it's a very civil, well-written email. It's also about parking, on, in front of their houses. So, and he says he's looking for comments on the issue and any insight as to a solution.
I did respond to his email, and this email came after I had responded. So I think he clarified the situation in this. but I think, well, I don't know what to say. He's already in contact with Joshua about the situation in the park. And
What situation? I wonder.
I believe,
The drinking.
well, no, public urination.
Well, Joshua's.
But there are no restroom facilities in the park. That's one of the concerns.
So for point of clarification, you said you had already responded, but it might have been to an earlier email. Do you believe that you've adequately responded to the email, or is there additional follow-up?
Well, I thought I had adequately responded, but then we got this. So I believe he might want to know whether there are any code elements that apply in these situations.
What if we ask the city manager to respond to it and just clarify what, just lay it out and
I
be
think
done with
that's a great idea.
So
Motion?
moved.
Second.
it? All right. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is I think it's for your information, energy efficiency funding opportunity from Leanne Wilson.
I move, could we share this with the new sustainability coordinator as, so I move we just share this information with the new sustainability coordinator to do with as they will.
Second.
Okay. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next is a beautification project proposal from Nathaniel Kuhn, Fuel Young Professionals.
Seems fine.
I would move for a memo on this one. Is that okay?
Well, actually,
We don't even need that.
they need to, you own the property. It's probably a good thing. They maybe will improve it. They just have to provide you with the proposal, what they're going to do, and then you can respond to it.
I would move that we ask them for a more thorough proposal of what they would like to do with this area.
Yeah.
Second.
If you're totally against it, we could say that, but we can't. I don't think we should be. We should find out what do they have in mind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good idea.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Number 8, Belinda Ellsworth nuisance complaints.
Okay, so we've dealt with this. We've actually contacted the property owner about cutting the grass and gave them a deadline. Quite frankly, this has been the second or third time, so we may even look to file charges on this. But and the other one is moving the well, we verified there's not anything distributed outside. Remember, we had a complaint about that. The last time we inspected, there's nothing on public property, and the police just have to keep making sure they can move if they move the bus even ever so slightly, every 48 hours, they're legal the way this system is. But I think we'll take care of the grass cutting on the private property. So I don't know if you need any more information.
I responded to her too, and I don't think she copied everybody else on her responses to me. I pointed out that the city council is not really the fastest way to get action, right? And she said that the neighbors want to be sure that we are aware of the situation. I did affirm for her that we are aware of it and that it continues to be a point of discussion. So we may still get more emails.
There was two points that she raised.
Mhm.
Which one is she wanting the council to be aware of, or both of them?
Both.
All of them.
Thank you. Okay. Very good. And number 9, Rusty Brammer, homeless camp along Railroad. And I would just may suggest that yes, city manager to contact or staff contact the railroad, because if they're on railroad property, that becomes a railroad issue, not a city issue.
Right.
Did you want a motion?
Yeah.
Need a motion. Move to have city manager respond,
Okay. Thank you.
notify
Notify the railroad.
the railroad.
Second.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to report of governing body. Any updates from Discover Ames?
There was not another meeting since our last meeting.
Okay. AEDC,
Nothing new.
Story County has not met. Transit.
Transit has not met.
All right. Council comments. Emily, glad to see you in person here.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Well, first of all, I'm officially back in Ames. I've moved into my new apartment, so that's very exciting. I got here about an hour before this started. So there's that. And then also, as we get closer to the school year, my projects are going to be ramping up. So there might be times where I'll be emailing you guys individually if I'm not able to talk to you guys about it before I come here or afterwards. One of the projects that the president and vice president of the student body are very interested in is dining and campus town. So I might have to have a meeting with the city manager's office for that at some point, but we'll work that out later on. I think that's all. But yeah, my projects are going to be ramping up. And then as we get closer to the joint meeting, I'll probably have more to say about certain things, just so you guys know.
Thank you. Rowan.
Nothing for me tonight. Thank you.
Nita?
Just wanted to see what council thought about putting in a request to staff to tell us a little bit more about how we can address sidewalk repair and tree removal for residents, a potential program, what that might look like, qualifying project types, funding sources, eligibility requirements, program management, and other details such as what staff might be needed. I had some correspondence with Brian, and he thought the best thing to do would be to bring it here and see if there was interest among council, and then see if there's interest in moving forward. But just given some of the conversations and feedback that we have had from folks in the community, and thinking about even affordability and keeping people in their homes, knowing that they may not have to spend thousands of dollars potentially for tree removals or for sidewalk repairs, if there are ways that we can manage that, looking at what are programs that are out there and what are funding sources.
Is this not on its way to us in any other way? Do we know? I mean, because we had talked. It's a good.
Right.
I like
And
the
so
idea.
I asked that too,
I'm sorry, I
because
didn't
I
hear what you
thought
said.
we had,
Oh, I just wondered if it was already on its way to us
In the work
some
plan of some
form.
sort.
right.
But Brian said no.
But Brian said he did not think
Yeah,
so.
but we're doing that on the sidewalk. We have
We have a plan, but we don't have a plan for, at least when I asked, it didn't appear that that was anything that was going to come back to us with more details and information.
Is this for
Okay.
based on need? In other words, for low and
This is
moderate
based
income?
on need.
It's not for the whole population.
Mhm.
Is
Low
that
and moderate income.
that helps me focus on funding possibilities?
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
So the sidewalk repair was part of the report from Vanessa, but we don't have program
Right.
requirements.
Right.
Okay.
Mhm. We don't have a way to connect that with the community at this time.
And that could be one of the sources we could get back.
And that could be one of the sources.
So it's geared to that. Okay.
And your motion was for a memo.
Yeah, I
from
think you need a
staff
memo
on
on
that.
Yes.
I heard you
Yeah.
say.
I'll
Yes.
second that.
Those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Yeah, excuse me, just focus, it's tree removal on private property too, is what we're looking for.
Yes. Yes. So those instances where a tree may be dead and we've had
Dangerous.
folks say that's dangerous.
Because we take
but
care of it
we
on the
can't.
street, but you're talking
Mhm.
about- that's fine.
Dangerous.
Just want to clarify.
Mhm.
Anything else?
We had a great meeting with Community Academy youth, and a chance to hear from them about projects that they've been working on this summer, and more to come, I think, from them.
Amber?
Nothing for me. Nothing tonight.
So on a sad note, I attended a funeral on Friday for a 25-year-old, another suicide victim. Young man grew up in the community, solid family, great two-parent family, and took his life. So I am fatigued of going to the funerals of our young people. And this is a national problem, but the mayor has shown great leadership in promoting mental health awareness, and but ultimately we need each other and we need to be in community. And if people are struggling with depression and other mental health challenges, there are people out there who are willing to help. And so I don't know that there's any great lessons other than we just need each other and need to try to reduce the stigma attached to these kind of challenges.
On a more positive note, I want to thank staff for working through the issue of the downtown pillars and congratulate the contractors on successfully removing the historic tiles for reuse in some other location. I think that's a positive. Rummage Rampage was a big success, but I haven't seen any final numbers yet. So I'm still waiting on that. I'm really curious to see where we stand this year over last year. And I missed our last meeting because I was in California for the meeting of the AI Advisory Council for the National League of Cities. And there were lots of excellent suggestions made by the committee to the National League of Cities about developing an AI toolkit so that cities can more effectively implement AI without shutting it down and use it to their benefit. So I'm looking forward to more discussion of that in the future. And I think that there's an awful lot going on, and Dubuque seems to be using AI in a number of ways that may be of interest to us here in Ames.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Mark, does council have justification to enter into closed session?
Yes, you do. Iowa Code Section 21.5 1C allows the council to go into closed session to discuss matters in litigation or where litigation is imminent.
Thank you. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Roll call.
Aye.
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 I
Thank you. Thank you, Roger. All right, we're back in open session. Is there a motion relative to what was discussed during closed session?
I move that we proceed with the course of action discussed in closed session. Second.
Thank you. Any opposed or abstaining? To adjourn.
Adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.